Hey everyone, welcome back. We always get such fascinating material from you guys, and this time is no exception. Today we're diving deep into employer branding podcasts, especially for higher ed.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So many of you are laser focused on attracting that top talent, building a strong employer brand, right?
Right.
And what really jumped out at me was this whole idea of using a podcast to humanize a company.
Makes sense. It's a great way to really showcase the culture, right?
Well, exactly. It's about going beyond those kind of, those stuffy mission statements on a website.
Yeah.
Let people actually hear from the folks who work there.
Yeah. It's like giving potential applicants a backstage pass.
I like that, a backstage pass. And some of the research you sent even suggests that these podcasts can help attract a more diverse group of candidates, too.
Oh, absolutely. When you feature employees from all sorts of different backgrounds, you're sending a really powerful message about inclusivity. It's about showing, not just telling.
And that leads to my next point, which honestly kind of blew me away. The sources suggest that podcasts can actually lead to higher quality applicants.
It's fascinating, isn't it? When candidates really get a feel for what your company culture is like, they can make a much more informed decision about whether it's the right fit for them.
Right.
And that means you're not just getting a ton of applications, you're getting the right applications.
Okay, so we've talked about the why. Now let's dig into the how. Your sources had some fantastic tips on launching a podcast, but first things first, planning.
Oh, planning is key. Absolutely.
So defining your target audience, figuring out what your goals are.
Right. Goals are so important. What are you trying to achieve with this podcast?
Exactly. Do you want more brand awareness? Are you trying to attract very specific types of candidates? Or maybe you're looking to see a bump in applications overall.
You need to know where you're going before you can figure out how to get there, right?
Right. And then, of course, choosing the format that works for you, right? Like, are you doing interviews, solo host?
It all depends on your audience and your goals. Think about what will resonate most with the people you're trying to reach.
Exactly. And I love this point that Jared Conizet, the CEO of academicjobs.com, made. He talked about being super clear about your return on investment.
Yeah, he's right. You've got to be able to measure the effectiveness of this.
Okay, so we've got our plan in place. Let's move on to content.
Okay, so content development. This is where it gets fun. It's all about those employee stories, right?
Yeah. Showcasing those career journeys that are a bit unique, folks from diverse backgrounds, people who can offer real insights into what it's actually like to work at your company.
Those stories are gold. They bring your company to life.
They do. And remember, it's not just about showcasing the people, it's about showcasing the purpose behind the work, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can talk about your company's impact on the community, your sustainability efforts, your vision for the future. All that adds depth.
So, to actually get those great employee stories, our sources talked a lot about the interview process.
Yeah, asking the right questions can make all the difference.
Definitely. It's all about those questions that really draw people out.
Instead of asking, what are your responsibilities?
Yeah.
Try, what's a project you worked on that you're really proud of and why?
Exactly. You get such much richer answers that way.
So much more engaging for the listeners, too.
Our sources even had this cool idea of brainstorming potential questions with your team to get those different perspectives.
It's a great way to make sure you're covering all the bases and asking questions that are relevant to your audience.
Love that. So we've got the plan, we've got the content, but how do we actually get this podcast out there?
Well, that's where things get a little technical.
Right. And luckily, the sources mentioned using a service like academicjobs.com. What's great is that they don't just help with creating the podcast itself.
Right.
They also handle the editing, getting it onto platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Huge time saver.
It can be a real headache trying to figure all that out on your own.
It really can. So it seems like we've got all our bases covered. The plan, the content, the tech stuff. But how do we know if it's actually working?
Now that's the million-dollar question. And it's not just about downloads, is it?
Right. Downloads are great, but they don't tell the whole story.
Definitely not.
Oh.
We need to look beyond those vanity metrics and dig a little deeper.
So how do we know if it's actually moving the needle?
Well, think about it. Are you seeing more traffic to your careers page after a new episode comes out? Are people hitting you up on social media asking about your company culture? Those are the good signs,
Yeah,
right?
those subtle little hints that they heard something on the podcast that sparked their interest.
Exactly.
The sources you sent went pretty deep on the benefits of these employer branding podcasts.
Yeah.
We've touched on a few, but I want to unpack them a bit more.
Sure.
First up, humanizing the company.
Yeah, that's a big one. Think about it.
Right.
You've got a candidate choosing between, let's say, two universities. One has a fancy website with, the typical mission statements. The other one has a podcast where they can actually hear professors talking about what they love about teaching.
Right. Mentoring students, sharing their passion projects.
Exactly. Which one feels more real, more human?
Totally. You're not just reading about the culture, you're experiencing it.
Right.
The sources also talked about attracting diverse talent.
Yeah, that's something a lot of companies struggle with.
For sure. And I think a podcast can really help with that.
It's one thing to say you're committed to diversity and inclusion, but it's a whole other thing for potential applicants to hear from employees from different backgrounds.
Right. Sharing their experiences, their perspectives, it makes those commitments feel real.
Absolutely. It shows that you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
And it lets candidates see themselves reflected in your company.
Yeah, that's so important.
Another benefit that really stuck with me was this idea of improving the overall quality of applicants.
Oh, that's a game changer.
How does a podcast even do that?
Transparency. You're pulling back the curtain, letting candidates hear the real stories, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Right, giving them a realistic preview of what it's like to actually work there.
Exactly. And that leads to better decisions on both sides.
So candidates are self-selecting based on a much deeper understanding of the company.
Exactly. You're not just attracting more applicants, you're attracting the right applicants, the ones who are a good fit.
Love that. Saves everyone time and energy in the long run.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered humanizing the company, attracting diverse talent, improving candidate quality. What was the last one?
Enhancing employee engagement and retention.
Oh, right. Enhancing employee engagement and retention. That one seems a little less obvious.
Well, think about it. You're giving your employees a platform, a chance to share their stories, their expertise, their passion.
Makes them feel valued.
Exactly. And that can have a huge impact on retention.
It's like you're creating a sense of community, right?
Totally. Both internally and externally.
And when employees feel seen and heard.
They're much more likely to stick around.
Makes sense.
Plus, don't forget about the ripple effect.
Oh, the ripple effect. What's that?
When your employees are engaged and happy, that energy is contagious. It affects everything they do.
From interacting with students to representing the university at events.
Exactly.
You're creating a culture of pride.
And ownership.
Right.
A podcast can really help foster that.
Okay, so you mentioned some potential pitfalls earlier, like sounding too corporate, too scripted.
Yeah.
Any other red flags? Things companies should watch out for?
Definitely. Avoid making it all about you.
Right. The company.
You're trying to connect with potential candidates, tell stories that resonate with them, their aspirations, their desire to make a difference.
So less bragging, more showing the impact your company has on people's lives.
Exactly. Let's say you're a research university. Instead of just listing all your amazing discoveries, share the stories of the researchers who made them happen. The struggles, the motivations.
Humanize it.
Exactly. Make it relatable.
Okay, on a more practical note, how do you ensure the podcast sounds good?
Audio quality is important. You don't need a professional studio, but you do need decent equipment. A quiet space.
Makes sense.
Academicjobs.com can handle all the editing and stuff.
Right.
But you want to make sure the raw recordings are clear.
So invest in a decent microphone, do some test recordings.
Exactly.
Our sources were big on prepping interview questions to get those amazing stories out of your guests.
For sure. The questions you ask can make or break an interview.
Any tips for crafting questions that, really spark those compelling stories?
Think about how you want your listeners to feel.
Okay.
Ask questions that evoke emotions. Pride, excitement, maybe even a little vulnerability.
Instead of what's a typical day like, ask something like, what's the most rewarding moment you've experienced in this job?
Exactly. Or what's a challenge you faced and how did you overcome it?
Get to the heart of the experience, not just the bullet points on a resume.
Exactly.
And brainstorm those questions with your team. Get different perspectives.
Love that idea.
What?
It's a great way to ensure you're asking the right questions. And don't be afraid to get creative with your format either. Maybe have a segment where employees share a favorite book that's inspired them or something.
Oh, great. A rapid fire round.
Yeah. Fun, unexpected questions that let their personality shine through.
Keep it fresh. Keep it engaging. Now, speaking of engagement, our sources mentioned putting your podcast front and center on your recruitment webpage.
That's a great idea.
Great.
Candidates can get a taste of your culture without having to, search all over the internet for your podcast.
It's like a built-in recruiting tool.
Exactly.
And they also talked about leveraging platforms like Spotify and YouTube where people are already spending their time.
Right. Meet your audience where they are. Make it easy for them to find you.
And that's where academicjobs.com comes in. They can help you reach a much wider audience.
They handle all the distribution and promotion, so you can focus on creating great content.
So we've talked about the why, the how, the what. But what about the ROI, the return on investment? How can companies really measure the impact of a podcast?
Well, for starters, take a look at your applicant tracking system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you seeing more applications from candidates who specifically mention your podcast?
So track the source of your applicants?
Exactly. And look at the quality of those applicants.
Wow.
Are they a better fit for your company culture? Are they asking more thoughtful questions in interviews?
Are they sticking around longer?
Exactly. Look at those long-term trends.
It's about using data to tell the story of your podcast's impact.
Data is your friend. Track everything you can. Downloads, website traffic, applicant sources, employee feedback. Use it all to fine-tune your content and measure your success.
We were talking earlier about the importance of showcasing your company's purpose, not just the people.
Right.
How can companies effectively weave their mission and values into their podcast content?
It has to be more than just a tagline. It
Yeah.
has to be woven into the fabric of your storytelling. Let's say your company's really big on sustainability.
Okay.
Don't just have an episode about sustainability. Find ways to integrate that value into every episode. Have a researcher talking about a project that's helping the environment, or an employee sharing how they've made their department more sustainable.
So show your values in action.
Exactly. Make it real. Make it believable. Show that it's not just a corporate slogan. It's part of your DNA.
Which brings us back to that golden thread, authenticity.
It really is the key to a successful podcast. When you're genuine, when you're transparent, when you're not afraid to be human, that's what resonates with people.
It's about being real, right? Letting people see behind the curtain.
Exactly. And that's what makes these podcasts so powerful. They give you that insider look.
It's like you're having a conversation, not listening to a sales pitch.
It's about building trust, making a connection.
And those connections can lead to some pretty amazing things.
Absolutely. They can change how people see your company.
Yeah.
Make them curious.
And hopefully inspire them to, apply for a job, reach out, become part of the team.
That's a goal.
It's amazing how audio storytelling can really cut through all the noise.
It does. It's a powerful medium.
So if you're looking for a way to, I don't know, take your employer branding to the next level.
A podcast could be your secret weapon.
Yeah, it's a chance to showcase, your company's personality, what you stand for, the opportunities you offer, and you can do it in a way that feels authentic and engaging.
And it's accessible to pretty much anyone, anywhere in the world.
It all comes down to this. What stories are hiding within your company?
Right. What voices are waiting to be heard?
Because those stories, those voices, they can really transform your employer brand.
They can help you attract the talent you need to, achieve your goals, make a difference.
Well, that about wraps it up for our deep dive on employer branding podcasts. We covered a lot of ground today. Everything from planning and strategy to, the art of storytelling.
And of course, we talked about the impact a great podcast can have on your recruiting efforts.
Hopefully you found this exploration, helpful, inspiring, maybe even a little thought-provoking.
It's been a blast diving deep with you.
Likewise. So remember, authenticity is everything. Don't be afraid to experiment. Find your own voice. And as always, keep diving deep.
Get those microphones rolling.
We'll see you next time.